Chase Thomas the Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, welcome back. Chase Thomas podcast, taping this on a Wednesday afternoon. The Ringer's own Joe House makes his return to the podcast. Clinton Portis, Manute Bull, excuse me.
Manute, yeah, let's go. Yeah. The OG.
The OG Manute Bull. And do you have a Wheaties box? You have a
That's
little...
the Redskins 1988 Super Bowl.
Is it really?
Yes.
Okay. Are you a big collectible guy? Do you collect a lot of stuff, DC memorabilia, or is it just now with the Zoom video format, you're like, I got to add some stuff behind me?
Well, I have collected stuff over the years, and I like stuff, but I'm not like heavy into the collectibles. Like I don't have anywhere to put it. It is a wonderful coincidence that in this Zoom life that we occupy now, I had something to do with all these jerseys and stuff. I mean, if I could move the camera, I would show you. I have a box of Ovi's O's cereal. There's a Jason Worth bobblehead. I've got it all. An Elvin Hayes jersey is over here. Let me see if I can move it.
There it is.
That's just some of that stuff. Stephen Davis jersey is over there in the corner.
That is a name I have not heard in a long time, Joe.
Well, you have to honor it. I mean, he got his butt kicked by Michael Westbrook, so you have to have that jersey. Stephen
Davis. That is one. I have not heard Stephen Davis.
Deep cuts, Chase Thomas. That's how we do it here in the household.
I love it. Well, Joe, that's the happiest the DC talk's going to be, I think, on this podcast. I wish I could be nicer, but you know what? It is the holiday season. We're 5 days out from Christmas. My first question to you, we'll stay positive to start things off here, Joe. The nicest thing you could say about the Washington Wizards right now would be what?
The nicest thing I could say, they're going to have a great draft pick in this upcoming draft, this upcoming 2024 draft. Now, of course, there aren't, as of this moment here, around Christmas time, names jumping off the page. It's not by any accounts a historical, transcendent kind of draft. It doesn't have those kinds of players, but by golly, the Wizards should be in the top 3 or 4 once that draft arrives.
What does that mean for Johnny Davis, though? I mean, you're going to have to really prioritize that fit next to Johnny Davis, whatever guard or wing you add, right?
We're going right off the rails immediately. I feel like that's almost personal. He is.
I'm sorry, AJ Griffin's not playing for us. Like, he's in the Quinn Snyder doghouse, like a lottery guy from a year ago. He's just out of the rotation. Like, played 91 minutes this year. Look, Joe, as someone who is watching a very unpleasant basketball team as well at the moment, we're simpatico.
I'm more disappointed in your Hawks than my Wizards, although I am very disappointed in my Wizards because I thought that they would compete. And honestly, really, I have nobody to blame but myself because I dramatically misunderstood what kind of basketball player Jordan Poole is. And we'll get to that in the fullness of time. But help me, Chase Thomas. I have a commitment in the form of actual investment of real American dollars in the Atlanta Hawks performing well this season. I thought that they were poised to be a team that was a handful of games above 500. I thought that Dr. Quinn Snyder would come in and be able to work some of his magic, apply some of his surgery, and get Murray and Trae Young on the same page working. It is not working. They are the worst team in the NBA against the spread. I know that's not the only metric that matters, Chase Thomas, but it is a metric that matters to me. It's also reflected in their win-loss record. More losses than wins. What's going on in Atlanta? We'll get to Washington in due time, but what's going on in Atlanta?
Not a lot of defense, I'll tell you, Joe. Not a lot of defense. I will say, like, one of the things about Quinn, I mean, the defensive adjustments for what Quinn's trying to do versus what Nate did has just really wrecked Clint Capella defensively. He's always a slow starter, but Clint just really, the Hawks are, they're just not as good as they've been in years past with Clint. And Onyeka Okongwu has taken a step back. That's been a big thing where you obviously extend him, and then he's shooting at least at 1-3 a game, which is, hey, that's nice. He's shooting like 30% wide open threes. I mean, hey, baby steps with Okongwu. They're a terrible rebounding team. Not a lot of guys on the boards for this group. AJ Griffin out of the rotation. Like, they're having to start Garrison Matthews some nights. I will say the biggest thing that has ruined the Hawks, because I think Quinn has been the best thing about Quinn Snyder is he's made Trey is playing really good basketball. Like none of this is a Trey problem. Trey's playing the best basketball he's played since the playoff run a couple years ago. Like Trey is awesome of late. No negative things to say about Trae Young to this point. But Jalen Johnson going down, they were 8-6 with Jalen Johnson. Since he's been down, they are a bad, just not even a playoff team at that spot. And they're just super thin. You look at this roster, you got Trenton Forrest getting minutes, you've got Bruno Fernando in the rotation one night. You got Garrison Matthews starting one night. Like, you go through it. It's just, they're really thin. They couldn't withstand injuries. And the one guy they could not lose for a significant stretch, because I think they could survive with Trey. Like, if you did DeJounte and Bogey, because Bogey's been really good off the bench, you could survive a 12-game loss of Trey. They have shown they can't survive. Like, John Collins, obviously, you get for nothing. You trade him way too late. And you were thin there. And Jalen Johnson looks like a good player. Like, he looks like a core guy. But he's gone, and when I tell you this team is light years different without Jalen Johnson, and that's something I just did not have before the year, that Jalen Johnson would be the difference maker.
What happened with DeAndre Hunter? And we'll get to Washington, but that was supposed to be, he was supposed to be the vehicle by which some of the impact of Collins was mitigated. I mean, Collins, I understand you looking back now at the way that the team has performed this season and that particular vulnerability at that position. Would you prefer to have Collins? I don't know. It might have been an addition by subtraction just because of the chemistry piece. But DeAndre Hunter was supposed to pick up some of that slack. That was the thesis, I think. Am I wrong about that?
Well, it depends on who you ask. Someone who's watched a lot of DeAndre Hunter in their life, Joe, just sent me a text before the year. Been like, hey, I'm kind of high on DeAndre Hunter. I could have just been like, no. And then I would have saved you a lot of time and anger about this Hawks team being the worst against the spread, which I did not realize to this point. DeAndre's just fine. The problem is you traded up for DeAndre. Like, he's someone you traded up for in the lottery. He misses a lot of time. He's not exactly elite at anything. He's playing 63%, I think, of his minutes at the 4 this year. And I don't think that's where he needs to be. I think he needs to be at the 2 and 3. He's not big enough to be the long-term 4 guy, but because of just injuries and everything else, he's kind of playing a little bit out of position. He's not a great shooter, not a great passer, solid defender. Like, he's okay, but he's like a souped up Tony Snell to me. And that's just a tough place to be for a lottery pick you traded up for.
I no argument there, but him at the 4, that's exactly addressing the thing with, like, if Capella and Okongwu are not going to be those guys that are, catching all the boards, it's, DeAndre is supposed to be contributing, and it's just not going to happen.
No, we're like throwing a Okongwu, Capella minutes out together. Like, Quinn's experimenting. Quinn doesn't. It's not even really Quinn's fault. Like, he walked into a situation that's tough, but like, I don't think there's a fix, and that's what the Atlanta Sports Guys and we were talking about last night. Was like, there's no fix for the Hawks roster right now. Nobody has any trade value. You can't move Trey. Jalen's now like a linchpin of your core. You can't unless you really blow it up. If you go the Trey route, everybody's on the table. Then you just move on from everybody.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to listen to the entirety of it, but my beloved colleagues and guys that I know that you admire, Bill Simmons and Ryan Russillo on the Bill Simmons podcast that's up right this second. I don't need to plug it, but they have, Bill Simmons especially, has DeJounte Murray as a trade candidate. He has Murray, in a mode where he's the most valuable Hawks asset.
I would say Jalen's our most valuable Hawks asset, but I also you need him to play a little bit more. I'm sure teams are curious because it was 14-game sample of him playing really good basketball. I mean, there was a modern Amari Steve Nash vibe with Jalen and Trae Young to start the year, and it was really, really fun. I want to see that long term. I want to get Jalen back, and I want to see what Trae, like the DeJounte stuff. He's gonna make like $47 million 4 years from now. I don't know who's taking that contract. Like, Jalen's fine, or DeJounte's fine, but who wants that contract right now? Who is he moving the needle for?
Think about what $47 million will be 4 years from now, though.
Yeah.
That might be like one of the more cost-effective contracts because of the way that the contracts and the TV deals that are upcoming might push the collective bargaining agreement and the money that players are catching.
What if it goes down, though? What if the agreement, we'll see, what if they don't get the deal they want, right?
You're right.
Like,
you're absolutely right.
I don't know.
But it's not headed in only one direction any longer, these TV rights, that's for sure.
And it could change on a dime. Like, I'm not going to pretend to have any real, like, feel on where that's going to be. Like, is it back on NBC? Is it everything going to be streaming? Like, I have no idea what the next deal will be, right? So I just don't know if there's a strong appetite to invest $47 million 4 years from now in DeJounte Murray without knowing what's to come on that side of things. Joe, I don't appreciate you moving this to the Hawks. I was trying to focus on the Wizards. I get enough of the Hawks in my life. They're not more interesting. Your team is finding new creative ways to lose every single night. Jordan Poole's taking off-balance threes at the buzzer, just all kinds of crazy stuff. Like someone who you said you got it wrong. I'm curious what you got wrong about the Wizards coming into the year and what you got right. What are you looking at this point in the year that specifically that fills those two questions for me?
So in a general sense, I thought that this Washington team, with some of the experience of the guys, of the starters, would be in a mode of trying to compete for the purposes of building up their own credibility, their own trade value for whatever their next job might be. Because I don't think that any of the guys on the Wizards right now look at the situation and say, I'm going to be here for the next 10 years. There isn't, notwithstanding, I mean, from Kuzma all the way down, they just extended Denny Avdia. I think they all recognize that all of them are fungible. All of them, concept-wise, are movable parts for a team that's yet to come down the road. The only player I will say that I hope is with the Wizards in 10 years is Bilal Coulibaly, who is the real deal. He is 18 years old, and that kid has defense in his DNA. And I have him pegged. You know, I'll be looking at the futures markets, not to bring everything back to gambling, Chase, but I will be looking at the futures markets each of the next handful of years for steals leader and try and catch a good price on him. At some point, the league will catch on, but he's an incredible defender intuitively. And
who does he remind you of?
Man, he's super long wingspan wise, and he moves on the perimeter so well. It's going to be very hard to not like put him in like superlative class, and I don't intend to do this. But the way that he can cover one side of the court to the other side of the court, wingspan and hand wise, and the way that he's able to defend that way, it's like in the class of maybe like Kawhi. You know, like, oh wow. Now, again, this is all potential. We have no idea, and he doesn't have giant Kawhi hands, but young Kawhi who could be active from side to side and get off of screens and get out to the shooter. He's got that DNA in him, so he's the guy that I'm thrilled to have. But the misjudgment by me was the notion that this team, with proven Tyus Jones, proven veteran. Jordan Poole, eager to wipe away, some of the bad taste that occurred in Golden State. A guy who I think thinks in his own head could be a significant contributor to a winning team, and just didn't get all the opportunity that he wanted in Golden State. Kuz for sure could help somebody. Daniel Gafford is a guy that could definitely help. But notwithstanding all of that, it has been appalling. And what's appalling especially is Jordan Poole. I haven't had a player with that combination of talent, and I should use the right word. It's not combination, it's mismatch. His natural basketball ability, his talent, especially as a scorer, is near elite. And he might be, and I want to be very careful in how I say this, from a hoops IQ perspective, from a pure basketball intelligence perspective, one of the dumbest basketball players I've encountered. And I've had a lot over my 50 years of being a Wizards fan, a Bullets fan, then a Wizards fan. We've had a lot of characters over the years, a lot of guys who seem like they might never get it. I mean, we had Nick Young here. We had my big guy. Why is his name not
Kwame Brown?
No. Well, Kwame was blessed with skill, but just didn't have any interest in playing. basketball. I'll think of it in a minute. He's still in the league, the center that I'm thinking of. We acquired him we traded him to Denver.
I know who you're this is going to drive me nuts.
He was on Dallas for last season. I just don't know why I can't.
Oh, JaVale McGee.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, JaVale McGee. Yeah.
Yes, right. Anyway, so lots of characters over the years, lots of guys. We had Jordan Crawford here for a minute. Speaking of notorious chuckers, guys not afraid to.
Not a lot of Antoine Jamesons anymore. We got to get some more Antoine Jamesons in Washington.
You're right. Yes, for sure. But the Poole thing, part of the problem is the team itself, I think, made an error in judgment. He's the guy that they gave the microphone at the first home game to welcome everybody and say, we're really looking forward to a season here. So they conveyed to him that he was some kind of leader, that he had some kind of leadership role. And all he is the leader in the clubhouse for most appearances on Shaqtin' the Fool. He's a Shaqtin' the Fool Hall of Famer. I mean, from intentional and unintended, play and approach to the game. I mean, just the game you mentioned, the off balance, falling away 3 with a chance to cut into a deficit, a game that the Wizards competed very well. We're talking about the Phoenix Suns over the most recent weekend. They were really in that game. That game also featured him for somehow slipping out of the blue. Now, maybe there was moisture on the floor. I don't know, but a banana peel kind of slipped.
Yeah.
And immediately that goes viral alongside the crazy shot, the circus shot that you wouldn't even really countenance in a G League game for the combination of ill-conceived and ill timing and ill execution. It was an 0 for 3 there, Chase.
It's just, I didn't think they would be this bad. Like, I thought the Pistons were going to be bad. I thought the Wizards would be a play-in adjacent team. Because they also are sneaky kind of old. This Wizards team is not young. You got Tyus Jones, Jordan Poole, Denny has been here for a while. Kuzma's obviously older. Gafford's been in the league a while. Dylan Wright, who I love and miss every year in Atlanta, will always love that guy. You're not the youngest team. You got Gallinari. Obviously Bilal is coming into his own and he's a rookie, but it's a roster where you're there was some Hornets to it where you were just, there's just too many older dudes, and older teams, generally speaking, win more than these younger teams. And I thought they were going to play a heavy rotation with older guys. So I just didn't think they could be near the bottom of the East, but this is a near the bottom of the East type deal.
Well, the biggest reason, the biggest factor, if you look at their third worst in the NBA in terms of net differential, and the reason for that is defense. And what I mean by defense is absolutely no defense.
Well, we're in the same boat there, Joe.
Yes. Well, except for Wizards are in a whole different class, buddy. They are the Pacers give up 127 points a game. The Wizards are right behind them at 126.8 or 9, some crazy number. Absolutely. In the last 6 minutes of every single game, a close game can go from a bucket or two to 12 to 15 points like that. And that's the thing that really, as a person that appreciates, I just want them to compete, and their inability to compete over that last handful of minutes in regular season NBA games is galling. I don't mind them losing. I want them to compete, and they can't compete because they just can't play defense at the end. The only player, they have 2 players capable, Gafford and Coulibaly, and Coulibaly's too young. He's in the rotation now. He's getting minutes, and Gafford can't stay on the floor because it's easy to get him into foul trouble. And he's got a little bit of injury. But when he plays, he had a great game, Gafford, against Phoenix. Speaking of, he was the reason that they were competitive. But yeah, it's a sad story over here.
Final thing on the Wizards. This is always something I wonder about because you're more plugged in, and when you're on the outside and you just when people want to blow it up with organizations and look like the Falcons, it's just rough all around for Atlanta sports fans right now, Joe. But I am curious, when you dig a little bit deeper and someone more in the know of what this Wizard ownership group is and everything else that goes into the Washington Wizards, do you think this is the right ownership, GM, coach combination to lead you through this rebuild? Because it's fun to say like, hey, we'll blow it up and we'll start from scratch. We'll draft this guy and then we'll be there and competing again in 2 to 3 years, this, that, and the other. I'm sure the Pistons thought they were going to do that. Charlotte thought they were going to do that. Orlando thought they'd be here a lot longer than how long it actually ended up taking them. And do you think the move potentially down the road will be something that ends up being a positive for the organization, that maybe they change their name, maybe it brings new life into the fan base, maybe it does kind of change where the Wizards are headed or currently sitting right now? You're more plugged in, so I was curious from your perspective here, Joe.
So I do have high hopes for the GM, president, decision maker nucleus that has been brought in here. Michael Winger and Will Dawkins, those are legit guys with real creds when it comes to team building, when it comes to successful drafting, where those guys come from in terms of Oklahoma City and other places where there was genuine rebuild that they contributed to the success of. Those guys are legit. I trust them. It's the first time in literally 20 years. We went from Ernie Grunfeld to Tommy Shepard, who was a Grunfeld apprentice. 19 years of the same kind of mentality, the same kind of overpay a non-superstar, relentless missing out at the draft, like draft after draft, getting the wrong guy, missing Tyrese Halliburton because we wanted Denny Avdia because he played great, in the Euro League. Like I can do 10 of those. I can do 12 of those. I can do 15 of those kinds of misses. This GM decision-making nucleus, I think by virtue of what they accomplished in the past, I have high hopes for them. The current coach, Wes Unseld Jr., is universally regarded as a wonderful guy, very sweet guy. He is an assistant, and it's totally fine for him to be the steward and the shepherd of this team in transition. And for them, he'll always have on his resume, he'll have all these losses, so he'll have a horrendous win-loss record as a head coach, but he will have on his resume that he was the head coach of the team that his father helped put on the map, and that there's a banner in the rafter, a championship banner in the rafter that's part of his lineage. That's a cool story. I like Wes Unseld Jr. like in that personal kind of sense. He's nothing as an NBA head coach, and we'll never know as long as he's here in Washington. He will not be the head coach for the team as they sort of come into whatever identity they're going to be. The owner is really the culprit here, though. And what's going on here in Washington during the entirety of his tenure is he got the Caps first. When he bought both the Wizards and the Capitals and the stadium all at once from Abe Poland. But his ownership for the Wizards was told by some number of years, was put off into the future. He hit the absolute home run lottery in hockey by having the team be bad for a couple of years, and then he got Alexander Ovechkin. And since Alexander Ovechkin arrived in Washington, they have been printing money here. The interest, we have a Stanley Cup in the last 6 years, 2018, and the folks come from the suburbs, Northern Virginia and Maryland, downtown to DC to see Alexander Ovechkin. Those are 41 sellouts or near sellouts every year since Ovechkin was drafted.
Wow.
The team's been in the top 10 in attendance. It's just a tremendous support. By contradistinction, the Wizards have been a second-class citizen. They have not received the same kind of commitment. And part of that, you can tell because he was content with Ernie Grunfeld running the show, even though it took really a groundswell. It went beyond clamoring. I mean, the fan base was openly showing up to games with signs about getting rid of Grunfeld. That's what it took, it seems, to catch the owner's attention. And so all the resources, this is the observation here in town, is that the Caps are the preferred child and the Wizards are the second-class citizens. And it's certainly true in terms of this rumored move to Northern Virginia. That serves the Caps for sure. It does not serve the Wizards in any way, shape, or form.
So it seems like you're kind of like, that's why I'm just so worried. Like when people are talking about like blowing it up and stuff with the Wizards, I'm just like, well, if there's an ownership problem and you're seen as the second class entity from this ownership group, is it a good idea to buy all the way in on what they can build and just what they can ultimately be in this group? Or, I mean, I don't know. Like that's kind of a scary spot to be in as a fan, right?
You have to trust, as long as Winger and Dawkins are here, then I will trust that those guys have the discretion to go and try and build a winner, that it's been conferred upon them in the same way that Leontis was basically like Ernie Grunfeld and Tommy Shepard. I'm fine if you run this team into the ground.
Yeah.
Now he's got two young, competent guys, genuinely capable of team building. If he just leaves them alone and lets them do their thing, then I have some hope. And if it's both,
don't you have Travis Schlenk too, by the way? Am I crazy?
Yeah, Travis Schlenk, yes, who I hold in high regard. I think that what he did in terms of that relationship between Nate and, I mean, he helped Trae Young really salvage his career because he brought in Nate Robinson. Like Travis Schlenk, that team building that he did with that Hawks team early in Trae Young's career, I thought was pretty commendable.
Yeah, no, good eye for talent, good roster builder, but yeah, oh man, that's a whole other podcast, Joe. I'm curious from your perspective on this one, more likely to be in the finals, health permitting right now, because I've been going back and forth on this the last couple of weeks, and I've watched a lot of Clippers lately. More likely to be in the finals, health permitting, the Lakers or the Clippers? Who you got?
It's got to be the Lakers, because health permitting is the crucial.
Well, let's just operate under they're both healthy going into the playoffs. Let's say that they're both healthy.
You're really asking us to suspend reality, though.
Yes.
Because if that's the exercise, then I prefer the Clippers.
Yeah.
I prefer the Clippers. I think that because if you're telling me that this version, the last 8 games that Kawhi Leonard has played, and his numbers are through the roof, and he has been the true hero in terms of assimilating Harden and letting Harden become the best version of himself. If you tell me that these last 8 games of Kawhi Leonard that we've seen, that's going to be him all the way through the playoffs and the NBA Finals, then sure. I think this version of Harden, where he's happy, where he understands his role, it works for them. If Paul George and Kawhi Leonard and James Harden are all healthy, and that's what you've told me I have to believe.
Yes.
I don't believe it, but you told me I had to. Then I think the Clippers are better suited for a deep run than the Lakers.
I think so too. And I just want it to happen because Kawhi has just been unbelievable this December. Like Kawhi being unbelievable basketball is a lot of fun. Like this is a more enjoyable NBA experience with Kawhi being healthy.
It's totally true. It reminds us how much of the last handful of years we've been cheated of seeing this kind of player.
I agree. Joe, what can the good folks check out from you across the Ringer this week?
So East Coast Bias on Thursday mornings at 10 a.m. on FanDuel TV. That podcast is up on Thursdays as well. And then Rare Wise Guys, me, Raheem Palmer, John Jastrzemski, and the cousin Sal every Sunday at 11 in the morning live on FanDuel TV, trying to give you some winners in advance of the NFL slate each and every week. We'll be doing this all the way through the playoffs and up to the Super Bowl, but catch us on FanDuel TV every Sunday at 11 in the morning.
Please don't bet on Colts Falcons on Sunday. Please don't even talk about it. Don't talk Heineke versus Minshew. Like I've thought about going. I'm going back home for the weekend. Like, do I go? The tickets are so cheap.
It has real playoff implications. Like,
okay, don't do this, Joe. Please don't do this. Don't bet the Hawks. Don't bet the Falcons. Stay away, Joe. Stay away. I that's all I can say. Is just stay away.
I'll take your word for it. Thank you, Chase Thomas.
Joe House, Ringer.com. Check it out. Go check out everything Joe's doing each and every week, all across the podcast platforms and everything else at Spotify. Joe, thank you so much, and we'll have to do this again soon.
I can't wait. You hit me up, Chase.